Satnam, good morning. So we're in the kind of window of this new moon, and it's very, really quite deep new moon because you can really feel it coming in. That's always a good sign. And there's also this particular new moon. The full and new moons of this kind of month every year are really potent to clear a lot of the kind of parental stuff that we're still carrying around, which is some of the most important work that you can do for your spiritual evolution and your progression. And a lot of times there's something Yogi Bhajan describes that I think is really, this interests me a lot because it's a very unique way of describing how this kind of gets lodged, how parental programming, particularly your mother's programming, and not just like programming around certain, aspects of the way the world work, but this is programming around your nervous system and your limbic system development, this is why I think it's so interesting, because it kind of goes pre-verbal, kind of the values that are programmed into you at a very in utero state as well. But this is actually in the level of kind of the way the electrical current and the way that the whole central nervous system develops. Which then is, as that kind of programming happens, then determines all sorts of things of how you can handle the charge or the time frame or the timeline of your life as you go through the growth of the chronological and otherwise experience of being human in your own sovereignty, your own individual life. So the way that Yogi Bhajan describes this is that in utero, your mother has blackouts of her nervous system, and this can be on a full spectrum, because a lot of the babies that, and I say this a lot because it really is something that I think about, a lot of the babies that were in utero in the 60s, the mothers were getting prescribed speed. Because of, the like keep your girlish figure while you're pregnant kind of stuff. I mean, let alone like all the smoking and the drinking and everything else, and what that does to the central nervous system. So, let's just take that. Like, say your mom was fully, she was fully integrated as a human being, but she liked to smoke some Marlboro Reds. And, she was smoking during the pregnancy, or she wanted to keep her girlish figure, she was taking the speed. We're not even talking about emotional stuff. We're just talking about, like, any kind of substance that entered into the bloodstream that affects the central nervous system. Okay, so these blackouts that happen to the mother's nervous system when you are in utero create a certain pattern or circuitry of blackout in your nervous system. And this is, I don't know, there are very few, I'll say, modalities that actually go to the core of these blackouts and start to strengthen, reprogram, and re-nourish the central nervous system and the limbic system so that you actually can kind of expand beyond those particular blackout circuitries that have been inlaid into the nervous system in utero. And I'll give a metaphor for what this is like. We have the air conditioning on a timer, and we're building out Boulder, which is like such a, when I built this studio, it was like building permits, and, we just like we were pretty renegade about the whole thing. We built it to code just in case somebody, it's better to ask forgiveness than, so we built it to code, but we just did the thing. And that's common in Los Angeles. When we went to start to build out Boulder, it's just been hilarious because Boulder City is very precious about all sorts of things, including, very environmentally sound and all the green kind of legislation. And so we have to put in all these lights on timers because of all the green kind of mandates. I mean, it's a really heavy duty situation there. It's like massive amounts of permits. The lighting all has to be on certain timers because of the green. So, we'll talk about the shadow of that on another level, because the heroin problem in Boulder's like really heavy, and I was thinking like everyone's like happy and it's like green and I've been needed it, and then there's a shadow to all of that, which is an interesting thing. But so we have to put all of these timers in. And this is basically what happens to the nervous system of the child that is experiencing the blackouts of the mother, of her nervous system. And what he described as these nervous system blackouts is basically the circuitry is plugged up in some way. So maybe from a substance, or maybe just from food, or maybe from an emotional reason. There's all sorts of reasons why your mother's circuitry would be plugged up or not strong. And then certain stressors and certain things, certain contextual things are happening, and then the nervous system fritzes, which looks like some sort of neurotic kind of situation or some freak out or meltdown of any sort. And then there's all these hormones and the thing, and then those kinds of Morse codes of blackouts start to develop in the central nervous system as the spine of the baby develops in utero. Because you get the kidneys, the adrenals, and the spine are these kind of first developments of the cellular activity, and that's where the kind of DNA seeds of the DNA, or the kind of centers of DNA are formed in utero. So you get the kidneys and the spine. So then, you come out, and those particular timers have been installed in your nervous system of what you can and cannot handle, and how you can and cannot handle the kind of whatever comes at the limbic system or the nervous system as you go through your timeline. And the reason why we want to work with this right now is because if we consciously start to reprogram that and expand that and strengthen that, you're going to be able to handle the much increasing time situation and pressure situation on the planet in a way that's not just some programmed from your mother's particular level of ability to handle it, which is actually not yours. So this is where, and again, same thing with the breath pattern and the pranic. You get installed a pranic pattern from your mother's breath pattern in utero. And a lot of times, most of the time, unless your mom was a yogi of some sort or a meditator, those breath programs are very shallow. And they're, again, on a kind of timer of when the breath is shallow, the whole system can't deal with what is increasingly pressurized situation on the planet. So we want to get at that. So this is why we're kind of in a post-therapeutic model here with the Kundalini yoga technology, because this is not like the way that they treated you as a child and all the traumas and all the things that, happened. We're not even getting at any kind of content. We're actually dealing with the electric wiring of the nervous system, and how it's gotten pinched and programmed in a certain way that's really not organic to your particular level of capacity and your particular level of strength, dharma, and destiny. So that's what I'd like to work with today. And I'm very, both in my own experience, and also this is part of what happens when people start to transform through this practice, is that you're rewiring some of the circuitry that is not your situation. And this is also kind of when you think about the ways that we kind of carry the lineage or carry some of the quagmires of the lineage forward into, our children. This is part of the really kind of primordial stuff that gets carried forward, and it's why it's so important to rewire it so that you can help the children who are a much different kind of situation. These souls that are coming in, these future generations, they have a much more sophisticated capacity, so we can help them to basically access it. So if we are able to access it and start to change it, then we can help them to access it, which is really important because they're going to be on this planet doing things that have only been seen in, some of the propagandized hyperboles of the Hollywood movies. So we have to help to expand, because one of the things that they say, and I thought this was interesting because I just saw Space Odyssey 2001 for the first time, really. I'd never watched it before, and I watched it on an airplane, so one of the trips, and I didn't get to the end of it, so don't ruin it for me. But I only watched some of it, but one of the things that hit me was that one of the reasons they couldn't tell, and we're at a very interesting time right now in terms of this, and the information that the government is, the whole thing about other intelligence in the universe, which is obviously, why wouldn't there be? So it's very strange, little self-denial that's happening. But so part of the reason that they couldn't tell the people on Earth about this, situation that was happening on Mars or whatever the planet was because the nervous systems, they basically described it that the nervous systems of the humans couldn't handle the reality, that people would just fritz out if they realized what was going on. So that's why they kept the situation a secret. So that's part of, we're practicing the yoga of awareness, so we want you to get strong enough to be able to handle whatever is in front of us on the planet, and we are just at the very tip of the iceberg of a very, very interesting time on the planet. So we'll work with this today. Does that sound good? Okay, and the